August 1974, Memphis, Tennessee. Two of the biggest names in American music were both in crisis. Elvis Presley was battling prescription drugs, a crumbling marriage, and the suffocating routine of his Vegas shows that he couldn't break free from. Johnny Cash was wrestling his own shadows, the old darkness that kept trying to drag him back into addiction. On a sticky August night, both men ended up at the same spot at the same time, a modest black church in South Memphis, both searching for something they'd lost along the way. What unfolded inside that church over the next couple of hours stayed hidden for years, known only to the few who swore to keep it quiet. This is the story of the night two legends became brothers, bound by gospel music and their shared struggles. It was August 1974, and Elvis Presley was back in Memphis between his Vegas commitments. He should have been unwinding, maybe spending quiet time with Lisa Marie, gearing up for the next string of performances. But he felt restless, sleepless, haunted by a spiritual void that fame and fortune couldn't touch. Gospel had always been his true foundation, his anchor, the music that mattered more to him than any chart topper. Lately, though, he drifted far from it, far from God, far from the man he once was. That night, Graceland felt too confining, like a gilded cage. Around 10 p.m., he quietly slipped out a side door, climbed into an unmarked car, and drove through the city with no real plan, just a need to escape, to reclaim some sense of freedom. After wandering the streets for roughly half an hour, he pulled into a familiar part of South Memphis, a mostly black neighborhood he'd passed through before. There stood Mount Zion Baptist, the little church where he'd once heard gospel that shook his soul. He parked a block away and sat watching. Lights glowed inside, which was odd for that hour. Faint but clear, the sound of singing drifted out. Pure gospel. Without overthinking it, Elvis stepped out and approached. He circled to the back, using the side door he'd slipped through in the past when he wanted to stay unnoticed. It was unlocked. He eased it open and stepped in. Meanwhile, just a short distance away, Johnny Cash was enduring a similar restless evening. In town for some meetings, staying at a hotel, he felt the familiar gloom closing in. He'd stayed clean for years, but the depression lingered, and the spiritual hunger never quite left. When these moods hit, only gospel and prayer brought relief. He'd asked the hotel desk for suggestions on late-night church services in Memphis. They pointed him to Mount Zion Baptist, mentioning occasional evening prayer gatherings. Johnny drove over, arriving late, unsure if he'd even be allowed in. Like Elvis, he headed for the side entrance to enter discreetly. As he pushed the door open, he came face to face with Elvis Presley. Both froze in the dimly lit hallway. For a second, they simply stared. Then Elvis said softly, "Johnny." Elvis replied with a small shrug. "Same as you, I reckon. Searching for something." Johnny gave a slow nod. "Yeah, same." They paused another beat, then Elvis motioned toward the sanctuary. "Come on, let's go in." They stepped through into the back of the humble sanctuary. No grand architecture here, just plain wooden pews, a simple altar, walls worn by decades of worship. About 15 people, mostly older folks, were scattered around for the weekly late-night prayer and song service. Pastor James Williams, a steady man in his 60s who'd shepherded this flock for 3 decades, was up front guiding a hymn. Elvis and Johnny eased into the rear pew, trying not to draw attention. A couple heads turned, eyes widened, but Pastor Williams stayed focused on the music at first. The group sang an old gospel piece, their voices woven tight from years together. At first, the two visitors just listened. Then, almost without realizing, Elvis began humming along quietly. Johnny followed. Even at low volume, their voices, seasoned, soul-deep, stood out. Pastor Williams sensed the shift in the harmony. He glanced back, recognized them, and paused inwardly. Elvis Presley and Johnny Cash here in his church singing gospel. He could halt everything, announce them, make it a spectacle, or let the moment breathe. He chose grace. With a subtle nod their way, he turned back and kept leading. When the hymn wrapped, Pastor Williams spoke gently to everyone. "Brothers and sisters, Tonight we have visitors who've come looking for the same peace we all chase, God's comfort. Let's receive them like family." The small group understood. No commotion, just a few warm nods toward the back, one older lady offering a kind smile. No autographs, no star treatment. In that room, they were simply two more hearts in need. Pastor Williams opened the floor as usual. Anyone moved by the Spirit could share a song. Members stepped up one by one, offering timeless hymns and spirituals handed down through families. Elvis and Johnny listened, letting the music soak in. After half an hour or so, Pastor Williams looked toward the back pew. "Brothers," he said kindly, "if the Spirit stirs you, you're welcome to come forward." Elvis and Johnny exchanged a glance. No plan to sing, but the pull was undeniable. Elvis gave a slight nod. "Together," Johnny agreed. "Together." They rose and walked to the front. The congregation watched quietly. At the altar, Elvis murmured to the pastor, "Sir, mind if we sing something?" Pastor Williams smiled. "Son, you never need permission to lift your voice to the Lord. Go on." Side by side, no mics, no spotlight, just two men in a plain church. Elvis began an old childhood hymn, his voice raw from life, but full of truth. Johnny came in on the next verse, his rich baritone locking in perfectly. No rehearsal, just instinct. When the chorus hit, their harmony clicked. Natural, profound, born from shared roots and love for this music. The congregation softly joined, their voices rising together, filling the space with something holy. They moved through several hymns, trading leads, blending seamlessly. Elvis would recall one from Tupelo days. Johnny knew it too and harmonized. Johnny started one his mother taught him. Elvis layered in. No rivalry, no show, just reconnection with the faith and songs that had first shaped them. At one point, Elvis's voice broke on a line about grace and redemption. The pain poured out, the isolation, the traps, the weight. Johnny stepped closer, draped an arm around him, steady and silent. Elvis leaned in, drawing strength. They finished the song that way. Silence followed, deep, reverent. Then, wordlessly, they embraced. A real brotherly hold that spoke of understanding and shared wounds. Tears glistened in the eyes of those watching. These weren't icons anymore. They were just two hurting men finding solace. Pastor Williams approached, laid hands on their shoulders. "Brothers, thank you for your gift tonight. May God give you the peace you came for." They stayed another hour, sitting up front now, praying when the group prayed, singing when others did. When the service closed near midnight, they lingered. Pastor Williams invited them to his tiny office. "I figure you need to go soon," he said, "but know this, tonight was sacred. It stays here. My people understand discretion. Some things aren't for the world." Elvis, voice thick, said, "Thank you, Pastor. I needed this more than words can say." Johnny added, "We both did. Thanks for letting us belong here tonight." Pastor Williams replied, "You're always welcome. Anytime you need refuge, this door is open." Outside in the parking lot, they paused. Johnny began. "That was—" but words failed. Elvis finished. "Yeah, it was." They stood quietly, reluctant to shatter the moment. Finally, Elvis admitted, "I've been hurting bad, Johnny. Tonight eased something." Johnny gripped his shoulder. "I know, brother. I've walked that road too. Nights like this remind us we're not alone. God's here, and now we've got each other." In that quiet lot, they made an unspoken promise to stay connected, to reach out in the hard times. They swapped private numbers, direct lines, no managers. Over the next 3 years, until Elvis's passing in 1977, those calls came, late-night check-ins, simple "you okay" conversations that meant everything. Mount Zion's members kept their word. The night stayed private. A few shared it quietly with kin, always stressing secrecy out of respect. The story surfaced only after both men were gone, when their personal journals came to light. Elvis's was brief. Went to Mount Zion tonight, couldn't sleep, needed God, found Johnny there, we sang together, first real peace in months, thank you, God. Johnny's was deeper. He wrote of the shock at seeing Elvis, the power of their voices uniting, the instant he saw Elvis falter and moved to hold him steady. Tonight I saw my brother in pain, and we both found grace in the same unlikely place, not chance, God's hand. I pray Elvis makes it through the shadows. I pray I can stand by him the way he stood by me tonight just by showing up. Years later, when those entries were published, surviving members of Mount Zion confirmed every detail. One elderly sister remembered, they walked in carrying such heavy loads, and for a little while, through gospel and God's mercy, those loads felt lighter. It was a beautiful thing to see. That August night in 1974 became a quiet legend, a reminder of gospel's true heart, a space where everyone stands equal before God, where fame fades, pain is shared, and burdens lift. Even the greatest stars need faith, fellowship, connection, and music that reaches the soul. That August night in 1974, two legends weren't performing. They were simply two men seeking peace, finding it together in a small church where no one cared about stardom, where they were welcomed as brothers, and where gospel music did what it has always done, drew people close and raised them towards something greater than themselves.